Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this session, and we really appreciate that you're joining after office hours and sacrificing your personal time. We really understand, and I'll try my level best to provide most of the information that I can, so that you can benefit out of that. Okay, so this session is concentrated more on custom policies and mostly on we will try to do demo on Mule 4 custom policies, and in addition to that, where and when if we can identify the significant difference from Mule 3 to Mule 4 custom policies, we will discuss that. So there were a lot of changes that were done as part of Mule 3 to Mule 4 uh, uh, framework. So same thing regarding the custom policies too. There were a lot of changes that were made there. So we will go through that. So to start with, on custom policies, this is the agenda that we will go through today. So first, we'll understand what are custom policies and why we need to use these custom policies, and what are the scenarios that we can use these custom policies, and how can we leverage and benefit from those, right? And also, mostly we concentrate on the how part, like how to develop a custom policy, how to test a custom policy, right? And also how to publish a custom policy, and how to apply a custom policy in one of the environment that you have, right? So to start with, right? So let's start understanding what a policy is, right? So policy is nothing but, I mean, if you think about a book oriented definition, so policy is nothing but you want to enforce something, and then people can follow, right? So here from a MuleSoft terminology, a policy is something that you can enforce on an API, and that will add on some that will add some functionality. That can be anything, right? So when it comes to MuleSoft, there are a few things that we need to understand from a policy perspective. So policy is something that will help us to manage security, right? Something like, okay, if you want to enable basic authentication or OAuth or something like that, and also control traffic, right? So what you can do is you can rate limit. Based on the rate that the transactions coming in, you can limit that, or you can do a spike control, right? And there are multiple other things that you can do with the policy. But the specific thing, I mean, the significant thing about a policy when compared to regular code is that when you apply a policy, there is no change is required to the code, and there is no deployment needed, right? So it's on the fly that you can add some piece of functionality to your API, and you can get benefit out of it, right? So coming to these policies, right? So you can have business or implement business or technical requirements, and without any modification to the code, right? That's the advantage that the policy provides on MuleSoft platform, right? And coming to the functionality wise, obviously, this will, by adding some extra piece of code as a policy to your APIs, will actually extend the functionality of that API, right? And as it is core for MuleSoft, MuleSoft is always talks about the speed in delivering the speed in delivery, right? And also even when you scale it up, the delivery speed will not be decreased, right? So this can be achieved through your reusable APIs, or you can do reusable components within the Mule code, right? Mule flows. And the same thing can be done with these policies. So these policies can be reused, right? So when you create a policy, you can apply that policy to whatever the API that you really need. So this actually gives you a reusable reuse capability here, right? So coming to what are the scenarios that we need to use these policies? I mean, forget about the regular policies that we have. Just think about like what are the things that we can do with this custom policy, right? So a few of the scenarios that we have done and we have implemented or we saw are, first thing, from a security perspective, we can implement a mutual auth, two-way SSL. Like for example, if I have an API which is a bunch of APIs that I have to enable a two-way SSL by accepting a certificate and by providing a certificate, right? So all this functionality can be put in an API policy, and on the fly you can apply to an API, or you can just remove it off, right? So you have that functionality, and there is something like URL validations. So URL validation is one thing that we have recently implemented, where for the if some hackers are trying to inject some scripts to our API URL, right? So we want to validate whether the URL is valid or not, or if there are some kind of malicious characters, something like percentage or greater than less than symbol, where you can inject a script, right? So those are the things that you can really do, where you can inspect the URI that you received, right? And you can write some piece of code to identify, like, how do you really want to reject and throw a error response, or you want to just drop the request off and don't even provide anything back to back in the response, right? So these are the security things that you can really implement. And apart from that, one more thing that we have implemented is custom IP whitelisting. So out of the box, there is an IP whitelisting that MuleSoft provides, where you have to give a bunch of IPs. So if I really have 100, 200 IPs, and those IPs are categorized into buckets, right? So in these scenarios, what we can do is we can store all those APIs in a table, and all those IPs in a table, and then we can write a custom policy, just take the group of the IP and then just apply it to a bunch of APIs for IP whitelisting. So this is one thing that we have done. The second thing is from analytics perspective. So most of the time, most of the policies that MuleSoft provide out of the box gives, has same functionality that we talk about. But most of the cases, or most of the organizations, need something more than that. And for analytics, one of the use cases, for example, if you are getting a client ID and client secret from a client, right, API client, and based on the client ID, client secret, you have a metadata associated to it. So for example, okay, I have given a client ID 1 to a brand partner, and client ID 2 to a brand partner. But really, when I try to log to my analytics platform, I really need that information. I don't need the client ID, client secret, but I really need like who the client actually is, right? So such kind of information, if I really want to do it, so that can be done through these policies too, right? So because most of the cases, logging is expensive. So policy would be a best option here. So whenever we are trying to troubleshoot, right? If you want more information, business-related information or technical-related information, right? So in that scenarios, you can write this policy and you can apply it on the fly. And once we capture the information, we can just disable the policy. So that's one good thing that it offers, right? Control traffic. So controlling the traffic, I mean, we have a lot of policies, out of the box policies, rate limiting, spike, and also you can put item pattern filters, and you can block it. But if you really want to go beyond that, right? So you want to take the request and go back to a database or something on your side and see whether these kind of requests do we really need to accept, because there is a event already being done. It doesn't make sense to accept this request, right? Something like that. So those kind of logic you can actually implement in the policy, and you can apply it here also. Same thing with transformation, adding headers. There are a bunch of, in transformation, you can actually tweak the payload too. You can write the data weave and also tweak the payload accordingly, and you can send it in the response. So that's one thing that is available. Like, and also like few of the things that we have done were for info security. If few APIs should not be called from a browser or browser, right? So in those scenarios, we have to send few headers back in the response, like no code, no cache, something like that, right? So all these things can be done in the policy instead of doing in the code, because it gives us a flexibility to enable or disable it on the fly without even touching the code or having to redeploy out there, right? And most important is the extending a default policy. And most of these cases, if you think about it, most of this you have some policy which is related out of box related policy, but if you really want to extend that policy, so for example, if I want to take a client ID, client secret, client ID enforcement policy, if I really want to extend it by adding some extra functionality to it, so this is custom policy would be a best option here, right? So these are the use cases that we can really think where custom policy would be beneficial, right? So in addition to, I mean, before even going into the next section, there are other ways that we can really, there are other policies that MuleSoft supports. I mean, those are kind of advanced than the custom policies. So one thing is XML SDK. So XML SDK is nothing but you can take an API and you can create a connector out of it, right? So you can create a connector out of the API, the REST API, and you can reuse that connector as part of your MuleFlow development. So it's a similar thing, and the reason that I'm bringing this up in this custom policies session is it's almost similar to a custom policy from the development perspective, but the usage is different, right? So there is one more thing called outbound policies, where you can apply a policy to a HTTP requester, right? Okay, so any questions till now? I mean, I'll just ask a question since we are here. Just respond in the chat. Can I apply a policy on a Mule application where I don't have a HTTP listener? Can I do that? I mean, you can respond in the chat. Okay, I don't see any. So let me explain. I mean, you cannot, ideally speaking, right? So because policies are being applied on API manager, okay. So HTTP is a trigger for this policy enforcement. So if I have a application where I have created where I start my process, where I trigger it based on a scheduler, for example, or a JMS queue, right? So MuleSoft currently doesn't offer any kind of policy for those other things, and the way that the policies work is whenever the request comes and hits the Mule runtime, right? And once it transfers the request to HTTP event, just before transferring it to HTTP event, that's a place where these policies will get executed, and then after that it will be handed over to the flow. So we'll look into that, like how this flow happens, like what happens if I have multiple policies, how it will get executed, right? So all these things we'll look into in this session. But till now, are there any questions? Anyone can put it in the chat. If not, let's dive in. Okay. So we understood like what these policies are, what benefit that they can offer, and also we also looked into we also understood that it can be applied only for HTTP based listeners, and especially when I say HTTP based listeners, yeah. What is an offline policy? Yeah, offline policy I will cover in the session, but just to let you know, when I say offline policy, so offline policy is nothing but if I don't have an API manager subscription, or I have an on-premise deployment, right? So what I can do is I can create a policy, and I can just drop that policy onto a runtime, and then automatically that will get enforced. So that is an offline policy. So these offline policies are used generally, I mean, because on Cloud Hub you don't have access to a runtime folder structure, right? So on Cloud Hub or Runtime Fabric you cannot do it, but for on-premise version you can go ahead. There's a folder, you can just go ahead and then drop the policy. There's a YAML that we need to create. If you just drop it there, automatically the policy will get enforced on the required API and the API that we requested, right? So that's an offline policy. And we'll do an offline policy demo too as part of testing. because on AnyPoint Studio, when we try to enforce the offline policy, I mean, we cannot enforce policy because we need to tie it to AnyPoint platform, and we have to apply there. So for testing purposes, what we'll do is we'll use this offline policy approach, where we create a YAML file and can just drop it into one of our Mule runtime folders, so that the policy will get enforced. Okay. So any other questions? I mean, Rama, did I answer your question? Any further questions? Okay. Let's look into Howpiece. Yeah, before even going to Howpiece, let me tell you a few other things about learning. I mean, the sources to learn about custom policies. I mean, obviously, docs.mulesoft.com is a best source to try out these custom policies, and there are like a lot of advanced things that you can really do with custom policies. I'll show you one way of doing it, but there's something called handlebars. Like handlebar is kind of a JavaScript framework where you can use those, and you can enhance. You can write more functionality on this custom policies. So I'll show you features, but docs.mulesoft.com is the best source to learn. And if you really want to look into any MuleSoft trainings where they can teach about these kind of custom policies, production-ready integrations is the best training that I can recommend, where they'll talk about these custom policies, as well as the XML SDK that I just talked about, right? So these two are the advanced things that we can learn there. Yeah. So going to how part, right? So let's start. Let's think about it. Like how we just understood how we can use a custom policy, and what is this custom policy about, right? So now we just need to think, okay, if I have this custom policy, if I need to develop a custom lifecycle, and also how I need to do it. So obviously, I mean, this is a basic steps that anything, I mean, you can do for any code that you develop. So first thing is developing the policy, and once you develop the policy, and once you test it, basically, if it is a code, you build it. In this case, you will package the policy, and once packaging is done, in a code perspective, you will in this case, we'll call it as publish. We'll publish it to Exchange. And once you deploy the code, we call it as go live, right? Like the first execution. So here in this case, you have to apply the policy to an API to see the execution of the policy. So these are the steps that we have to do to get the custom policy. So let's pause here and just think about it, right? So we came from Mule 3 to Mule 4. What are the significant changes conceptually different in Mule 3 and Mule 4 on the custom? I mean, there's nothing much from the concept side. It's exactly the same. You can apply for a policy on APIs alone, right? APIs. And the significant thing that I would say that, okay, hey, there's a big change that was done is there's something called automated policy that was implemented. For automated policy, I mean, actually, if you, I think you can see my screen right here. Yeah. So let me show you this one. So if you go to API Manager, right, there are two different sections for custom policies. So this is a custom policy, and these are the custom policies for that you develop before Mule 4, like Mule 3 and Mule 3 based policies. So where you can add it. For a regular custom policy, you have to it's completely a different flow, and actually that's a big change here, because that actually adds a value. So even for a custom policy, if you develop the custom policy in Mule 4, you would be seeing like this. Like when I try to go and apply a policy, you would see exactly in the regular policy section. Okay, but when it comes to Mule 3, it's a completely, so they have created a separate section, because Mule 3 policies, there is nothing like, there's no flow or anything like that. You just create a policy, and you can to dump the policy information here, policy files here, and you can apply that policy automatically. Okay. So coming back to our slides. Okay, so let's think about it, right? So what are the things that we have to do to develop a policy, right? Ideally, if it is a mule flow, what we would do? You go to Studio and you can create a new project, and automatically it will give you a template with the whole folder structure, and you will go ahead and then you will play with it, right? And exactly the same thing we used to have it in Mule 3. Okay, so if you have a Studio version 6, right, 6 plus, right, which runs Mule 3. So ideally, you would see that there will be a new policy project. Okay, so
Sarvesh, maybe a little bit zoom. The font might not be visible. Yeah.
can anyone help me how to zoom on Mac? The only thing that I can do right now is to expand.
Option, command, and equals all together.
Option, command, equals.
Option, command, and equals.
Okay, let me do one thing.
And plus symbol. That is op command shift and plus.
Yeah, command plus works. That is easy. But maybe not for the Studio.
Not for the Studio, I believe. Yeah. Go to the window option and choose.
Yeah, Studio also, it is working within the flow. When you open a flow and do it, it is working.
Option is now from the menu view zoom.
Window is a zoom option here.
Not in Studio, but go to Apple menu at the top. View. You're still in Anypoint Studio, right? This is Studio menu.
Is it? Okay.
I'm talking about Chrome. Go to Chrome, and then because you're sharing it in Chrome, right?
Yeah, Chrome I can. The MuleSoft Studio. This I can. Yeah.
Try in Chrome and then go back to Studio, see if it changes. I don't know.
So let me figure out.
Control plus minus.
I guess that's maximum.
The flows are maximized, zoomed. Let's say the configuration flows, right? When you open the project, but not on the Explorer. I'll find out. Meanwhile, you can,
Yeah. But mostly we will not use Studio, so we should be good with any text editor for policies. But but let me go back. Mostly we don't use we will not use Studio here.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to developing the policy here, right? So so in Mule 3, what you can do is you have a new custom policy wizard where you can create a policy. And on Mule 4, you don't have a wizard for the policy, right? So we need to come up with our own directory structure when we develop a policy there. So coming back to Mule 3, so let me go back. Let me zoom here. So for Mule 3 custom policies, if I just go ahead and click on custom policy, right? So what I can do is I can just upload one YAML file and one XML file, and I'm done there. It's ready, right? And automatically it will pick so that I can start applying the policies using the policy will be visible on the policies pane in APIs. So you can just apply the policy there. Okay, but when it comes to Mule 4 policies, we don't have a template, right? So in this case, what we have to do is we have to use Maven to create a template. So there is something called Maven archetype. So archetype is the one which will create a shell or a template for a project, and we can also we can also create archetypes, custom archetypes. You create having a custom shell, right? If you want to give any kind of template to some other developers, we can use this same archetype concept and can do it. Right? So for custom policies, this is the archetype command that we need to execute to create a policy shell. Okay, so let's look into this. Let's look into this command, right, and understand like what are the things that the Mule is actually expecting to create a policy and why, right? Not just not just like okay, hey, they gave this command, let's fill it and then just run it, right? So, but before that, just try to understand like why we need to provide all this information. So here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to connect to our archetype repository, which is provided by Mule here, and using that archetype repository, we are creating the shell here, right? So here, these are the things that these are the things for the archetype, which is group ID and artifact ID. So based on this group ID and artifact ID, we can understand that okay, hey, we are actually invoking our Mule's tool, and inside that the artifact is custom policy archetype. So basically, since I am requesting this to information, right? So it has to go to Maven and it has to pull those dependencies, right? So for that, we need to make sure that that dependency is included so that my archetype, my template will be created, my command will be succeeded, and I'll get a template. Any questions? Okay, yeah. So let's come to the next version, right? So this is the archetype version that MuleSoft is providing. So all this information is provided by MuleSoft, and from here, this is the information that we have to provide for creating the custom policy. Okay. So first thing is group ID, and they are saying that okay, hey, for group ID, we need to pass org ID. Okay. So what exactly is org ID? I mean, let's look into a few other elements and then come back like why we need. So the next is artifact ID. Obviously, policy name is artifact ID because I just need to put it in my artifact manager like Nexus or JFrog, right? And I have version here. So obviously, for any development that I do for code, Maven requires a version. So this is the version that they are expecting. And see the package type here. So they're expecting the package to be a Mule policy. So remember here, right? So when you create an application on Mule, if you go to pom.xml and if you look into the packaging type, it says like Mule application, right? So same thing, like if I'm trying to develop a Mule connector, the packaging type would be kind of a Mule plugin, right? So if I'm trying to develop a policy here, so I have to say the packaging type as Mule policy, okay? So let's come back to group ID. So what is exactly this group ID and what I need to provide and why, right? So I am creating a custom policy. So the concept or the difference between the Mule 3 custom policy and Mule 4 custom policy is Mule 4 custom policy is more streamlined. And since MuleSoft is always enforcing for any artifact or any asset that we actually develop, it has to be on Exchange. That's what MuleSoft says, so that it is discoverable and reusable, right? So for Mule 3, it was not done in that way. So you have to just create your own XML and YAML file and you just upload. And you have to maintain the policy code in one of your version repositories, and then you need to manage outside of the platform. So this is the change that MuleSoft has made in Mule 4. So here in this case, we need to upload this custom policy to Exchange. So how can I upload to Exchange, right? Because Exchange, if let's assume that all of us are working for different organizations, and our control plane, right? Our control plane is on cloud, MuleSoft provided cloud, which is anypoint.mulesoft.com, right? So in this case, if we need to, I mean, when I upload a policy, ideally the policy should go into my exchange. It should not go into any one of other exchange, right? So how I can identify my exchange, right? So the way that I can identify my exchange is based on org ID. Okay. So what is that? What exactly is an org ID? So let me show you here, right? So if I just go to Anypoint platform home, obviously it will show something here. So this is my root URL, or this is my context root. I would say this is my org ID. And the other way that I can find my org ID is this is called org, right? I mean, everyone knows that if you have multiple orgs here, that every org will have its own ID. Since I'm at the root org here, which is this is business groups, right? So this is a root org. So how I can go and get the same information is I can go to access management, and if I go to access management, I can see my organization and I can find my organization ID here, right? So this is how we can say that, okay, if I'm uploading something to anypoint.mulesoft.com, I can say that, okay, hey, whatever I upload, it has to go to my organization. So once you go to my organization, then you can store anywhere you want, like whether you are uploading a code for runtime manager, or you are uploading an artifact for exchange, whatever it is, right? So when you are sending something, and if it has to go into your own tenant, right? So this is the way that Anypoint platform identifies. Okay, so for that reason, we have to provide org ID here. Okay, so I'll show you like how it will use this org ID. Why we are passing the org ID here? I mean, we can ask a question saying that, hey, I mean, ideally speaking, I can pass this group ID, artifact ID, and version. This exactly looks like my Maven elements. So can I just go ahead and then do it in pom.xml? I mean, obviously, yes. Okay. So let's do it, and then let's see what happens. Okay. So I'm going back to my command prompt. Let me zoom this to a little bit. Are you able to see it, or should I?
It is clear.
Okay. Yeah. So let's run this command and see like what happens, right? So I have saved all. Yeah. One more thing before running the command, just want to let you know. Okay. Since Anypoint Studio doesn't have an option of creating a project, ideally speaking, for the whole custom policy, it actually doesn't matter whether you are going to develop the custom policy on Anypoint Studio or on a text editor. It doesn't matter. I mean, for me, I prefer to do it on text editor. I mean, there's nothing harm that we can even do it on Anypoint platform too, right? So I have created everything ready as a snippet so that I can fly through. So let's see. So this is the command, and this is what we just discussed now. Okay. Okay. So this is a command. So I'm trying to generate a template using this archetype, and then I am trying to. This is my org ID. Okay, and let me. What I'm trying to do is let me change a little bit. Let me call this as Meetup logging policy. Okay. So I am running this command. Okay, and what happens? Okay, so when I run this command, okay, there is a prerequisite that I have to do. So what is a prerequisite, right? So here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to get to an archetype repository, and from that archetype repository, I'm trying to create this policy, right? So what are the things that I really have to do is I have to say, where is the repository? Where is the repository is, right? So this is the section, and that we have to put it on. This is the profile that we have to put it on settings.xml to enable to tell Maven that, okay, hey, for this archetype, go and look into this repository so that you can get that information to create a template. Okay, so what I have done is I have gone to my Maven installation. Okay, go back here. Yep. So in my Maven installation, I went to my settings.xml. In the settings.xml, what I have done is I have added this section here. Okay. So what this does is it actually points to archetype artifact, and then it will pull the archetype artifact, and based on that, it creates a template. Okay. So since I have added this, this command executed. Otherwise, this command would have failed, saying that it's not able to find the Maven artifact, which is archetype. Okay. So now it's asking a few questions. So these are the information that we have provided. Right? If you see here, it automatically has Exchange repository URL. Okay, and after taking the Exchange repository URL, I mean, if it is doing a REST API in the backend to upload this custom policy, right? It uses this Exchange URL, and then the ID, organization ID is this one. So it will put / this organization ID. So, and then whatever the file that it uploads using that endpoint, or right, it will upload to our Exchange. So this is what it happens. So you can see all this information. So now it's prompting us something, right? So what it is prompting? So it's asking for a policy description. So, and sample policy for Meetup, right? And policy name, let's say Meetup logging policy, right? And it's saying, okay, hey, these are the policy name and policy description you have, and this is the information you really want to confirm. I'll say yes. So the build is successful. Okay. So let me go to my directory and go to the navigate, and I'll show you how it exactly looks like. So let me go to my endpoint studio workspace, and see here, Meetup logging policy. It has created a folder structure for us. So let's try to pull this folder structure in one of our text editor or our platform, I mean, our Anypoint Studio, and then let's try to inspect like what it has created. Okay, so I'm going here. I'm saying new folder. Oops, sorry. Like add folder. Meetup logging policy, open. Right. So let's look into all this information, right, and see what it has. So let's look into the folder structure. So this exactly looks like our Maven folder structure. Okay, so src main and then mule, and you have a XML file, right? Our Anypoint Maven folder structure. And apart from that, you have one YAML file, okay, and then one artifact, mule artifact JSON file, and you have pom.xml. Okay, so again, going back to Mule 3, okay, and then we'll just compare with Mule 4. So in Mule 3, like how it used to be. In Mule 3, we just now we saw, let me go back to my browser. Just now we saw in Mule 3, it is expecting a YAML file as well as an XML file, okay? So ideally speaking, if you go here, add a custom policy, it is expecting a YAML file with configuration parameters and Mule configuration XML, right, with the implementation. Exactly, it is exactly the same. So here you have XML file, and here you have a YAML file. But in the Mule 3 case, what happened was it is just expecting 2 files. It's not expecting any kind of structure way of doing it. And there are advantages and disadvantages, right? So let's look into the development, like why MuleSoft has gone with this folder structure, not just with these 2 files alone, right? So, for example, I have created a policy, and I'm trying to use a jar, right? For example, I'm trying to connect to a database. I need the driver information, all that information, which is a dependency here, right? So if it is on Mule 3, there is no way that you can provide a dependency. Whatever the policies, whatever the new things are, the new jars that you are using in your policy, you cannot specify those because you are not giving any pom.xml in your Mule 3. Okay. So generally, what happens in Mule 3 is it just takes those two, and whatever you have, whatever the dependencies that you have used in your policy configuration, obviously it will find it in our Mule jars. I mean Mule core jars. And if you have used only out-of-box components, obviously it will find and then it will execute. But if you use something else which is not part of Mule runtime services, right? So that would be a problem where it will not execute, right? So in those scenarios, what people used to do on Mule 3 was, especially who are on premise, they used to store all these jars on one of the user library. In the folder structure, there will be a user folder, user bin or user lib. So they used to put all the dependency jars there, and then automatically the runtime used to pick them up, and then it used to it enforces the policy. I mean, you will not see any kind of failures. So to avoid that, and then to give this functionality to everyone who are on on-prem or Cloud Hub, so you can add your own dependencies on pom.xml. That's the reason that they have went with this approach. Okay. So you can add whatever the dependencies that you want, not only just Mule. So it will work if as far as, I mean, if you are able to package that, and then if you are able to deploy, so it should work. So that's the advantage that you have in Mule 4. Okay. So going back to our slides. Okay. So this is the structure that we just saw. Okay. So we have the policy, and you have the YAML, artifact JSON, POM XML, and template.xml. So as we just discussed, the XML template is something like our Mule configuration file, which is your flows, whatever the flow that you create, right? Behind the scenes, this kind of XML. Okay, it's a Mule configuration XML. Exactly, it's the same concept here. There are a few differences that we'll go through. You cannot just like that create a Mule flow and then say, okay, hey, let's take the XML and then put it in the policy. I mean, it doesn't work right like that. But that's the whole gist, and that's what we will use to create this configuration. Okay, so there is an XML template where you have the complete implementation. And once you have when you have the implementation, you need input, right? So all the input parameters or the variables, whatever you call, right? So all that information is coming from this YAML file. So what this YAML file does is, YAML file actually creates. I mean, it will render into a UI. So let me show you how it actually looks like. Then you can get a clear picture like what this YAML actually does, right? So if you go to policies, and if you try to apply a policy, right, and choose any policy that you really want. Okay, I'm just choosing this policy. So this is the information that the policy is expecting, and it has created some sort of UI where the developer can actually input some information or for the policy to get executed, and that's what this YAML actually does. So it has the information. Okay, what are the input variables, and how the display fields should look like, and to accept those fields. And once those values are accepted for those variables, that will be passed to the XML configuration, and then that will execute based on your input. Okay. And we already know what is pom.xml. Pom.xml is for dependencies, but let's really look into pom.xml and see how different that is. Okay. Let me see if I can zoom this one also. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Let's look into this pom.xml, right? So what are all the things that we really need to look into, right? So first thing, we already know that, okay, these are the information that we already passed when we ran that Maven command, right? To create the template, this is the information that we passed. And see here, this is the group ID. Okay, this is the my org ID, my anypoint org ID came to this group ID. Okay, and if you just keenly observe here, the packaging, right? It's mule policy. Okay, generally you will see mule application, but in this case it's mule policy. And see here what it has done: exchange URL. Okay, it has added and create the endpoint ready to upload the artifact. Okay, so which makes it clear that, okay, behind the scenes, the exchange is actually using some sort of an artifact manager, maybe Nexus or JFrog, something like that. So basically, it has an artifact manager where you can upload your artifacts. Okay, and the other things that we really need to concern are deployment. Yeah, see here, this is the other thing that we really need to concern. So wherever you see distribution management, right? So basically in any of your code, right, any Java code or anywhere, so you are actually trying to upload that artifact to some artifact manager. So here in this case, Exchange is my artifact manager, and I am trying to upload this artifact, which is my custom policy, to Exchange, and this is and I'm giving my Exchange URL. Okay, so I have given Exchange URL here. Okay, and which consists of my org ID. Okay, so it's just org ID, and I mean, if I just have the whole URL with this org ID to identify my own tenant in anypoint.mulesoft.com, is that really sufficient? I mean, it's not, right? So I cannot just, if I know your org ID, I cannot do anything until I get authenticated, right? So if I have the credentials, then only I can log into anyone's organization and I can do anything there. So we still need to provide uh, user ID and password for our anypoint account, which is Exchange account here, right? And org ID, and also, I mean, if I provide that information, then my policy get uploaded to Exchange. Okay, so let's go back and see how we can give that information, right? Okay, so let me go back here and let's see my settings file. Okay, this is my settings file, and I'm showing you some secret information. Don't share, but anyway, I'm going to change my password later. Okay, so this is my anypoint user ID and password, which ties, see here, the ID, right? This ID ties back to here. So when it actually tries to upload, it needs the user ID, password, and also the exchange URL to upload the information and to upload the whole policy artifact to Exchange. Okay, so this is the information that is actually required. When you try to deploy your policy, it gets deployed to Exchange. Generally, when you deploy something, it actually goes to a server, right? Here in this case, when you actually deploy, it goes to your artifact manager, which is Exchange in this case. Okay. So any questions? I mean, I think I'm going a little bit fast, but any questions still here? Wait for any questions for a few minutes. If I don't see anything, I'll just continue. I mean, are you getting it? Okay. Will the code be checked in? I mean, there is, okay. So from the, yeah. So I have an artifact manager, right? Yeah, code repo or something. Okay. So here in this case, right, there is no specific code repo as such. Okay, the artifact that we are actually trying to upload to Exchange has the code. So for example, in this case, right, if I am able to create a jar for this policy, right, if I explode the jar will obviously have the same directory structure, and you will have the XML and the YAML file. I mean, that's basically your code. Okay, so there is no code repository, but the artifact repository is the one which is holding your code. Oh, for my demo? Okay. So, okay, that's a good question. Let me show. There's nothing. I can share the snippets file, okay, just in case. But I'll show you most of the information where it comes from. Okay. So if you go to anypoint docs.mulesoft.com, okay, forget about all the information that you have. So just go to this Mule 3. I have to go to Mule 4. Yeah. Okay. This is the section that you really need to look into. Okay. So I mean, I can upload I can upload my code to GitHub if you really want, or I can share the jar file once it gets built. But I mean, it's nothing you can, if you run the art type automatically, you will get the same information. So this is the one. This is the custom policy for reference. So this has all the information that we are going through, and so as from our scope of this session, outbound policies are not covered. We can look into this outbound policy sometime in a different session, but these are only inbound policies that we are going to talk about. Okay. This has all the information. I mean, I can once we do the build, I can share the jar too. Okay. Okay. So we understood like we understood the folder structure. Form.xml, we looked into it. Now we are looking into template.xml. Like what is this template.xml actually? Okay. How it is how this configuration is used to execute my policy, whatever I have whatever I write in the policy, right? So see here. So any template, any custom policy template, or any out of the box policy template, it will have the same structure. Okay. So it will say that HTTP policy proxy. So because we are applying the policies on proxy, basically, if you have a backend, or if you have an API ID, right, tied to API manager, when tied to your code, so that it can be discovered on API manager, it behaves like a proxy, and then we'll apply the policy on that entity. Okay. So I have and this is a policy template, and basically what I'm doing here is I have a section where I have policy source. So this is the source code where I have I will write all my policy code, like what basically nothing but the mule flow, okay, in a different way. We'll talk about like how different it is, but mule flow in a different way. Okay. So that's what we will write here. And there is something, a tag here, and it doesn't have any kind of section. It actually ends here, if you observe. Okay. So it's HTTP policy execute next. Just want to see the time. Okay. It's 1 hour. Okay. So execute next. So what is this exactly, and how it is used, right? So if you see here, the policy source. Okay. So whenever API is invoked, right? So generally, again, I'm talking about API. API means which has a HTTP listener. Okay, you cannot apply a policy where you don't have a HTTP listener. That's first thing. And second thing, the policy has to be. I mean, the API has to be discoverable, because you are applying a policy on API manager. If you see your application as an API in API manager, then only you can apply a policy there. I mean, if you don't put a auto discovery in your code, I mean, it will not get displayed on your API manager. You cannot apply the policy. Okay. So for Mule 4, especially, API auto discovery has to be enabled, and it should have an API ID so that the policy can be applied there. Okay. So what happens here in this policy source? So see here, this execute next. Whatever you write within this source before execute next, right? What happens is that code will get applied when the request actually hits the HTTP listener, right, in the flow. And then once your whole flow executes, when it goes back to HTTP listener to give the response back, whatever the code that you write here, right, that will get executed. So this execute next is the one which actually separates the policy, the code execution of incoming and when it outgoing incoming request and outgoing response. Okay, so that's what it actually separates. But not just that, right? So it has, I mean, um, um, if it is just a flow, they would have written, they would have coded it as execute flow. They would have not coded it as execute next, right? So execute next, what the extra thing that it actually does is, I mean, if you apply multiple policies, right, to an API, right, there is something called policy order. So if I have four policies applied to a single API, I have to specify order of those policies. Okay, so basically, based on the order, the policies will get executed, and then the response will be served. Okay, so this execute next actually handles the the policy which is in the next subsequent order, or if there is no other policy, it actually hand it over to flow. Okay, so this is how it actually looks like for policy execution order. Okay, so if I have let's assume custom policies, right? Let's take, I mean, even the regular policies have the same concept, but let's assume the custom policies for now, right? So I have created two policies, which are policy A and policy B. Okay, I have written some code, okay, which is A1. Okay, my intention was to uh, execute that before hitting my HTTP listener. And then once all the operations and everything is done, when it comes back in the response, before delivering the response to the client, this is the code that I want to execute, which is A2. Okay, same concept with policy B. Okay, and this is my order. So, and from the order side, my policy A is in the first in the order 1, and then order number 2, my policy B is there. Okay, and after that, I have my flow that has to get executed, which has this HTTP listener. So in this case, this is how the whole order looks like. So the request comes here. This is my first policy. It hits here. Because it is request, it executes A1. Okay, and once it executes A1, it has execute next. What is actually next? Next is I have a policy B. So it will go to policy B, and it will execute. Since it is still a request, it executes the first part, which is B1, and then it goes to execute next. Execute next, it hits the flow now. So once it hits the flow, it hits the listener, and then it executes all the flow information. And once everything is done, the response is coming back from the flow. So it came back from the flow. Now it goes back to this policy, because this is the one which delivered it to flow. So it is returning back to this flow. So it goes back to B2. The code that I have written in B2 will execute here, and then it delivers back the control back to policy A, and then A2 gets executed, and then the response is given back to the client here. So this is how the flow looks like, and this is the significance of this execute next. So any questions? If there are no questions, I can just go forward in this flow. Okay. Okay. So now let's look into our YAML file. So we just looked into the template.xml, and let's look into like what it has generated, right? So in this case, let's understand how it generated. Okay. So I mean, if you see here, this information, it exactly looks like my mule code. So again, I'm just trying to show you the comparison. I mean, if you are not able to see clearly, there is nothing I'm showing as such, but let me pick this one, right? So yeah, any configuration file that you see here, you have namespaces put in first. It's the same concept here. You have all the namespaces defined here. Exactly same way with Mule, exactly even for this policy, and same XML. Okay, and when you see for any policies, right, you will see a flow or a subflow. Oh, sorry, for a code, you will see a flow or a subflow. If you really have a flow, or if it is a global element or anything like that, you have the configurations, the connector configurations. Same concept here, right? So here, what they have done is, okay, they haven't written any code. The template doesn't have any code written before execute next, which means when the policy hits, when the control, when the API get called, when the control is transferred to HTTP listener, there's nothing it's going to do. But when it comes back in the response, what it is doing is it's actually transforming the response. It's changing the response to this hello world, and then it's actually adding few headers here. Okay, that's what it is actually doing. This is a template that MuleSoft is providing by default. Okay. So if you look here, okay, there's something called policy ID, and you see three curly braces here. Okay, and let's understand what the three curly braces exactly mean. Okay, um, but before that, let's look into YAML, and then let's come back like what it is. Okay, so basically, I mean, just to let you know that if wherever you see three curly braces, it's basically a parameter that you are passing it from that YAML or the user input or coming from the YAML, and then that gets resolved in your code execution. Okay, so let's go to YAML. Okay, and let's see. Let's go back to presentation and see here. Okay, so this is how the YAML file looks like. Okay, so in the YAML, right, this is the place where I will be rendering my template. Okay, so here's my template. I will be rendering my template whenever we are trying to apply the policy. Okay, so there is something I'm seeing here. Okay, hey, there is an input text box, and there is some name, variable name or something like that, right? And there are a few radio buttons, and I can also have some checkboxes. Okay, so there are a lot of information that I can accept, and then the information that I have accepted from here, I can the, those values I can take it and I can use it in my policy code execution actually. I execute my code. So this is what this policy YAML template looks like, right? So the ID. So this is the policy ID. So wherever when you saw where's that? Yeah, template.xml. Yeah, when you see this policy ID, right? This is coming from here. Okay, so I have an ID, which is for the policy, and I have a name for the policy and description that I have written. And if you clearly observe, this is the information that I have provided when I ran my Maven archetype command, and it used that information to generate it. Okay, so category. Okay, category and type, right? So these are the fields that actually says what kind of policy it is. And if you see, if you go back to policies, right, there is something called, okay, apply a new policy. There is a section here of category. Security is a category, right? So to filter all this information, this is what it is. And I mean, I wrote it as custom, so all my custom policies are coming here. Okay, that's what the category here is. Okay, all these are deprecated. So let's look into here. All these are pre-populated, right? Yeah, configuration. This is the place where I will provide all the input fields that I need that I have to pass to my policy code to execute the policy, right? So in this configuration section, okay, if you see here, I have property name. Property name is nothing but your variable name that you want to use in your code. Okay, so whatever value that the user enters on the AnyPoint platform when they apply the policy, so that gets stored in this property name that you gave here, and then it will be. I mean, you can resolve that information in your code. So name is nothing but display name here. So in this case, right? In this case, I just showed you. Configure policy. Yeah. In this case, this is a display name. Okay, but there is a variable behind this input field. Okay, and type. Okay, I mean, description is description. So whatever the description that you want to write, here, you can write all this description here. Okay, all that information will go here, and the type is nothing but data type, right? So data type is the one which actually renders your input. So for example, if I say Boolean, it's going to change my input field to a text a checkbox, right? So this is data type, and most of the string is one data type, integer is one data type, and you have Boolean. Okay, so these are the data types that you can really use, and you can go through the reference if you really want to try any other data types. Okay, default value is your initial value, or I mean, basically it's a default value. So if user doesn't enter anything there, and this is the value that the variable, this property name or this variable is going to assume. Okay. And these are the information, whether this is optional, okay, allow multiple, whether it is taken as a map, right? So all this information you can provide as part of this configuration section. Okay, and this is your variable name, and this is what you are going to use in all your code. Okay. And I mean, obviously, for this property name, you are going to give a MEL expression in Mule 3, or a data weave expression in Mule 4, or MEL also too. Right? So you can give there, and then it's going to resolve. So if you want to say that, okay, hey, for this property name, I want to pass my a query parameter. What are the query parameter that is going to come in the request? I want to pass that, right? So you can write your expression and you can put it here, so that it will pick the value and assign to this property, and you can use the property in your code. Okay, so this is what the YAML configuration looks like, and we will do one example too. But all this information that you have, you will be giving it in this configuration section. And most probably, whatever it has created here, we are not going to change anything there. Okay, so this is for YAML. Any questions on YAML? Okay. So coming to parameter types, right? So as I just discussed, if it is a Boolean, I mean, if it's a string, you are going to have text boxes. Integer, you're going to have a text box. Or if it is then you can choose a radio button, whether you want to enable or disable, right? And if it is a checkbox, if it's a Boolean, it's going to be a checkbox. So you have all these options. I mean, based on your data type, it's going to render that. Okay. There is something called handlebars. Okay, and I'll show you one example of a handlebar, how it looks like. But this handlebars is a framework, JavaScript framework, and what it does is, within the XML, okay, wherever you see these triple braces, okay, curly braces, right? So that is your property that you are receiving from your YAML file. Okay, so if I want to take the property and assign it to a variable, this is how my XML code looks like. I mean, this is how your set variable would have generated the XML code in your Mule flow, and this is what exactly it is, right? So I'm just taking this this value from the YAML, and then I'm assigning to this variable. Okay, the triple braces. So double braces is a place where you can enforce. It's handlebar JS is kind of a framework. I mean, I don't call it as a separate language or something, but it's kind of a framework. Basically, what it does is it enforces. It will give you a lot of language capability. So in this case, right, I can say if evaluate request is kind of true, okay, then what I do is then only I will be setting this variable. And actually, if it is false, I mean, I don't execute this condition at all. I'll go to the next one. Okay, that's what it is. So I can put a if condition, and I can make sure that all the XML statements gets executed if that if condition is actually true. Okay, and if you see here, this evaluate in request, right? So this is also a variable that I'm actually evaluating. It's a Boolean variable that I'm actually evaluating. Okay, I'll show you that example. But this is if you want to go advanced and write some sort of functionality where you want to loop through or you want to branch, right? So this handlebar JS is the framework that they have used, and this is how it will be used in the code. Okay. Okay. So let's look into our execution. So we just created our policy. Sorry. Yeah, here it is. We just created a custom policy, and I want to write some piece of code in custom policy, and I want to build artifact out of the custom policy so that I can deploy. Right? How we are doing on the time? Okay. So to make our life a little easier, I developed this before our uh, session. I pasted, but I'll walk you through what I'm actually doing and how I have done. Okay, so in the template, I'm just going to paste my code that I have created, and exactly same way, the YAML file with this information, I'm going to paste it here. Okay. And let's walk through. Let's walk through. How I have done and what actually I'm doing in this policy. Okay. So here in this case, my requirement is nothing but okay. Hey, just log the incoming payload, incoming payload in a JSON format. Okay, that's what my requirement here is. Okay, and when I send the response out to, I want to log my response also in JSON format. Okay, so what I have done, let me show you what I have done. So what I have done is I went to Anypoint platform. Oops, sorry. I went to Anypoint platform and I went and I created my own flow. Let me see if I have a sample flow that I've used. Yeah. So I have a component called JSON logger here. Okay, if you see here, it's a new component that you will get access when you add the dependency. So this is a JSON logger. Okay, and if I go to my configuration.xml, okay, so what actually my JSON logger needs, right? So this is my JSON logger. Okay, this is the command. Okay, so what I have done is I just took this. When I just take this one, it's not going to work automatically. Okay, so we should have the namespace associate. We should pick the namespace associated to it. Okay, so if I go to this the first section, okay, there will be a place where I have my section for JSON logger. Okay, let me find it. Yeah, see here. Oh, sorry. I think I can find it.
You can search for the prefix of the.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is the prefix. Right. So this is the JSON logger. Okay. Here I have my namespace name and I have the next directive to here JSON logger. So you just need to copy this information and you need to paste it because Anypoint Studio is not going to help you anyway in creating this custom policy. Okay, so you have to pick the elements and then you have to put it here. So in this case, if you see here, I have, in addition to whatever the default template has provided, I have added my JSON logger namespace and the corresponding XSD here. Okay, XSD schema here. Okay, so once I have copied that information, so what I have done is I have added my code here, which is JSON logger. If you see here, this is the JSON logger, and I have added this information to my code. And how I got this information is, so again, the same thing. So go back to your any code, and then pick this line that creates this information, right? So this is what I have done. The same thing, right? So if you really want to execute a specific set of functionality here, write the code, create a flow, okay, and ignore the flow XML, and then whatever the information, whatever the sequence that you have there, just copy everything, okay, and then just paste it in your custom policy template.xml, okay. With this, it's automatically get used. So the other thing that we really need to make sure is this namespace, right? So sometimes you will have like for example for flow, you don't have a namespace because it is part of your Mule framework, right? So you don't need to especially specify namespace here. But few of the other things you just need to give this with this column, okay. Just make sure those, okay. So once you have, so what I'm doing here is after the policy source, forgot about this statement for now. So after the policy source, I mean, this is the template that I got before, right? So policy source, and I have execute next, okay. So what I have written is this JSON logger. I'm just logging the whole message, which includes everything, right? Headers as well as payload, the request headers and payload. I'm logging the complete thing in JSON format, and they're exactly the same thing. I just copied the same thing and I pasted here, And in the response also, I'm doing the same thing. This is what my flow does. Okay. But if you see here, I have an element that I need to accept, which is message. So when I log the message, I have to indicate something, right? Saying that, okay, hey, this is the whole message logged from this logger, right? So this is a message that I'm accepting from the user. So let's go to my YAML and see like what is that message exactly, right? The message is nothing but it's kind of an expression that I'm accepting. Okay. So once I accept that, and I'm also giving the example in my description saying that, okay, hey, this is how it looks like. Okay. So I can say attributes.header ID. So if I'll go to header, and then whatever the ID it is there, I can just resolve that ID and I can paste it here. Okay. And also this is kind of a expression. Okay. And there's something that I'm accepting, I mean, which is not I'm not using, but just I want to show you the difference of the types that are available. So I'm also added one more string, which is environment here. And also I have added one Boolean value, which is before request or after request. So let's talk about this before request and after request. And the way that I'm using this before request and after request in handlebars. Okay, in this handlebars. So if the before request is checked, because it's a Boolean value that I'm accepting in the YAML, if the before request is checked, then only it will execute this statement, which will log my request payload. Okay. And if this is checked, after request is checked, then only it will log my after payload. Okay. So these are the two things, I mean, two logs that we are going to write as part of this custom policy, right? So let's look into like how to build and upload it. Okay. So 30 minutes. Okay. So what we are going to do here is we are going to package it. Okay. So I'm just skipping the testing piece right now, but I'll show you the testing piece, like how we will test this policy in any point platform. And also I'll show you how this will, I mean, how you can apply it in any point manager. Okay. So, but for now, I'm just going to skip the test piece alone because of time. But at the last, I'm going to show you once if you have time there. Okay.
Yeah, Sarvesh, just to interrupt, we do have a quiz. No, we want to leave at least 15-20 minutes for the quiz, so that let's focus on like whatever you can show in the next 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and then leave the last 15 minutes for the quiz.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have completed my policy. Okay, my whole policy is done, and now what I need to do is I need to build my policy and deploy the policy. Okay, so I'm going back to my terminal, and I'm going to my Meetup. Able to see it. Clear it up. I'm going to my Meetup policy, Meetup login policy. Okay. And I have my pom.xml, so I'm going to do my mvn clean package. Yeah. So when I do my when I execute it, it actually failed. So there are few changes that we have to do to pom.xml to make sure that our build gets succeeded, and then we can deploy it to production. So we just discussed that for settings.xml, we have provided the information. Okay. So for pom.xml, okay, I need to give my deploy version. So in Mule deploy plugin, I don't have a version here. So I will share this information after the session, but these are the things that we need to make sure. So for the Mule deploy plugin, I'm giving the version. And since I'm using, again, I can just remove this dependency. Okay, just like that, and then I can just proceed, because this is kind of something that HTTP policy transform. This is the dependency that MuleSoft is providing by default, so that you can write any code to transform your request or the response. I mean, ideally speaking, I can delete it and I can build it, but if you really want to use that level of functionality, you have to use your repository. I mean, you have to copy the repository's information into your code, and you have to execute it. Okay, so for now, I'll just take it from my here, distribution management and plugin repositories. And I'm going to execute. When you would have, I mean, there's nothing different. It's same thing with regular mule code also. So once I have executed this command, see here in the target, I got my jar file. So remember here, right? So this is a jar file that I have that it got generated. So in Mule 4, my artifact for the policy is the jar. Okay. In Mule 3, my artifact actually is the just XML and the YAML. Okay. In Mule 4, it's a jar. That's what I'm going to deploy. Okay. So I got my artifact ready. So now what I need to do is I need to publish my artifact to Exchange. So for publishing the artifact, right here, I need to do deploy. Okay. So I'm doing a Maven deploy that actually pushes my artifact, which is the jar file, to Exchange. So let me go back to Exchange here and be ready to see if my meetup is created here or not. Exchange. The meetup logging policy. And if you see, and someone asked a question that how I can play this the code actually, right? So once you execute it, if this is the meetup logging policy, and this is the version that it has created, and I can download this as a policy or a policy definition, and I can continue making it. So let's see, I uploaded the policy. Okay, I uploaded the policy. Now I am trying to, there's a requirement, I have to change the policy now, and I changed the policy, and I'm trying to deploy now. I'm going to try to deploy now. What happens now, right? The build will fail, okay, saying that 409. The reason is, for your regular application code, you can build with the same version any number of times that you want, okay? But for the policy, I already have 1.0.0 snapshot. So since I already have this version, when I try to do it, it's saying that I cannot do it, because if this policy is already applied to some other API, I cannot do anything. I cannot change the functionality right there. It might break the API, right? So it's asking me to change it and then deploy it. So in this case, basically what it is expecting is it is asking, okay, I cannot deploy the same policy. Please change it and then try to deploy. It'll and use that new version in your when you apply the policy. So when if I deploy now with a new version, right? I just changed the version in my pom.xml and I uploaded it. So now if I go to my AnyPoint platform, okay, go back to asset list, go back to Mule logging policy. Just waiting for, yeah, see here, it's a new version that I got. Okay, so this is what the policy deployment looks like. And once you have the policy deployed here for Mule 3, as I told, you already have the XML and YAML files. But for Mule 4, when you go here, I can apply a policy as a automated policy. Okay, as you know, automated policy is applied for all the APIs within the environment. I can do that, or I can go and then say apply a policy for that API, and I can apply it here. Okay. Where is that? Oh, sorry, I used the same name. This name is actually coming from here. It's my YAML. Yep. See here in the YAML, I have used this name. Okay, I haven't used my meetup message policy. So it took this as a name when it tries to display there. So basically, whatever you write on the YAML, that is going to get rendered in the UI. Okay, so that's what I just want to let you know. Okay, and you can see both the versions here because I uploaded it twice. These two are the versions. I can choose which version I want to apply on this API, and then all the information is here. and I can apply the policy, and then it should work. Okay. Any questions still here? And yeah, 10 minutes. I need. I'll just take 2 minutes to show you. So someone asked about the offline policies. So when I try to test a policy, right? So what I would do is when I execute this code or any when I try to execute this code, what happens is it will show where my mule home is. Okay, so I can go to that mule home, and there's a offline policies folder there in the mule home. And what I can do is I can just drop this jar that I just created into that mule home, and let me try and see. Yeah, uh, I can drop the file in the mule home, and then I can provide the input. For the policy, I have to provide the input, right? So all that input, I can provide it in a JSON file, and I see here, this is a mule home. Okay, so if I go to this folder, I can, yeah, I can see the folder structure where I can go and copy my jar file. And in addition to the jar file, since there is no UI available here, I still need to provide all this information. So for providing this information, what I need to do is I need to create a dummy one sample JSON file, something like this. Okay, something like this. Okay, I'm saying that, okay, hey, this is my, see, let's go to pom.xml here. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So this is my group ID, asset ID, and what I'm saying is, okay, hey, this is the policy template, and this is the API that I want to apply this policy on, where I'm giving my API ID here. And this API ID obviously will be in your code on your local Anypoint Studio, right? And then you would say policy order, like how many APIs if you want to apply. If you're applying more than one, so you can just choose the order. And then all the configuration, the input parameters that we really need to pass, we can pass it like this. And once you execute the code, automatically this policy gets applied on your local, and you can see the enforced policy output there. Okay, so this is the offline policy concept. If you don't have a Anypoint API manager subscription, this is how you need to do it on premise. In local testing, if you really wanted to test it on your Anypoint Studio, this is the way that you have to do it. Sorry, I have to run pretty fast at the last because we ran out of time. I can take any questions. If you have any questions, I can take now.
Yeah, we can take the questions as far as, no, let's start the quiz if
Yep.
so that they can post the questions there, and then we can respond back to them via email. That's what we usually do if we don't have time to address this during the event itself, during the meeting. So Naresh, you want to do the quiz, or who's doing the quiz?
Yeah, let me share my screen then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think most of, can you just highlight that, Sarvesh, the number for the quiz?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
showing it actually. But excellent content and good preparation, Sarvesh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is this okay, Harish? This is the information, right? So
1 second, I need to share the screen.
So in the meantime, I think everybody should go to menti.com and enter this code, right, Sarvesh, Naresh?
Yes, yes.
So if you can go to this URL menti.com and give the code 65616443 to access the quiz. We have a voucher, sorry, training credits, a voucher. What are we giving? Vouchers, right?
Yes, vouchers and yeah, mainly the certification voucher.
Yeah, certificate vouchers for the top 3 answers.
Okay, let me share my screen then in that case.
Yeah.
I think yeah.
Please respond in chat if you're ready to access the quiz. We are starting in a minute.
So we have 13 attendees. We have 7 joined mentee, a few more. And, okay. No problem, Kishore. Okay. Okay, I'm just starting the quiz. As you all know, right? You have 5 questions here, and between the questions, you have a little break, maybe a seconds. And once the question is released, you have 20 seconds to answer. And please look at your mobile, not on the screen, to answer. Whoever answered fast, they will be, having more points. So at the end of 5 questions, who are having more points together, right? They will be top 3 will be considered winners, and you need to provide your details in the chat, so that you can we can request certification vouchers for you. Okay, let's get started. We have equal. So let's see. Casper answered fast. So let's see the second question. I think it's gone somewhere wrong. Sorry, something gone wrong here. Let me quickly check here. Give one more try. Sorry about it. Seems questions got jumbled. We need to try again. Okay. Okay. Sorry if you folks were faster earlier. Now, little. Oh, that was tricky. Okay. Last question. We have Casper, we have Emmanuel. Last question. Okay, that's the correct answer. Let's see who are the winners here. Casper, Emmanuel, and Daniel, please, provide your emails so that we can send you the vouchers. We can request for the vouchers. Casper, Emmanuel, and Daniel. Yeah, good job. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Hopefully, it was a very useful session today. Please, in the chat, if you don't mind, take 1 minute to know, give us any further topics that you want to see in the next meetups. That will help us prepare and come back next month again. If you think something is okay, that you see is very much needed, please let us know.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Naresh, you noted down the email addresses, right?
Yeah, I'm just noting down.
Okay. Okay.
I think, see, Daniel email, I got it. What else?
Casper is also there.
Casper. And there is one more, right?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, yeah. Emmanuel, yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. I think I got your emails. We'll request for the vouchers, and please provide the feedback of the session. You'll get an email on this, and also any topics that you want to cover in the future, you can just provide in that email itself. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Hey,
Thank you.
good job, Savesh. Good job. Thank you.
Good work, Sarvesh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can stop.